Join us as we dive into the complexities of insurance in the small business sector with one of the industry's top leading figures.
Exposures can include financial risk, cash flow issues, unpaid invoices, many of which are insurable. Operational risks like supply chain disruption and cybersecurity incidents.
Let's take a moment to reflect on the impact inflation has on our businesses.
There are ways that they can buy protection and say, while I cannot control the business continuity or the risk management of the power grid or of one of my key suppliers, what I can control is the impact that has on me, and that's an insurable risk.
I want to connect with our listeners about something David highlighted: the value of specialty insurance products. Whether you are running a tech startup, a small manufacturing unit, or a non-profit, understanding the specific risk your business faces and finding tailored insurance solutions can be a big game changer. Welcome to the CanadianSME Small Business Podcast. This is your host SK, and we are here with another exciting episode. Today, we will explore emerging risks and trends in the small business landscape, effective risk management strategies for SMEs, and critical importance of business continuity planning. Joining us today is David A. Crozier, the president of Markel Canada, a premier provider of specialty insurance. With a career spanning over 4 decades in the insurance industry, David brings a seasoned perspective and a wealth of expertise in property and casualty insurance. Under his leadership, Markel Canada aims to expand its product offerings while ensuring top-notch service delivery. Join us as we dive into the complexities of insurance in the small business sector with one of the industry's top leading figures. Good morning, Dave. Welcome to the CanadianSME Small Business Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming in today. It's wonderful to have you here to share your extensive knowledge and insights into the insurance world. Understanding and managing risk is the foundation for any small business. David, could you discuss some common risks that small businesses in Canada face today and how they should go about identifying this risk?
Certainly, SK. Small businesses in Canada face a number of risks that would be common amongst businesses that can significantly impact their operations. Accidents or errors or losses arising from products can result in expensive legal action, while natural and man-made disasters can impact a lot of physical assets. Exposures can include financial risk, cash flow issues, unpaid invoices, many of which are insurable. Operational risks like supply chain disruption and cybersecurity incidents. Market risks from changing trends and competition. Property and operational risks, again, like natural disasters, fires, water damage, and liability risks that come from premises operations. Slip and falls are quite common, right through to lawsuits from customers who feel they've been wronged or they've been injured in some way. And they can also be risks arising from professional services and even regulatory risks from changes in regulations that affect the industry or affect business in general.
Right. There are a lot of risks involved, right?
There are very, very many risks involved. And one of the challenges is that every business faces a unique subset of those risks.
Right.
So while some are common to many industries, quite often what you'll also have, by the very nature of small business, doing what they do very well to address a subset of the market, they'll have unique risks that are all only theirs.
Right.
And part of the challenge there is it can be difficult for them to identify those risks because they haven't manifested.
Right. David, what role does insurance play in mitigating this identified risk?
Well, insurance is one of many ways of mitigating risk. Once a small business has identified the risks to which they might be subject, there's a host of things that they can do. It can begin with risk management, which can simply be the identification of risk. Once you've identified the risk, having a business continuity plan to best address those risks. Then you move into things like engaging with other professionals, either in protecting physical property, in securing property, in engaging with cyber experts to make sure that digital assets are best protected and or monitored as they can be. And it can go right on from there to accountants to watch out for tax risk, valuation risk. And what we would always say in the insurance industry is engaging with an insurance broker to ensure that they are identifying the insurable risks that they have, knowing what's not insured and therefore needs to be covered by mitigation and business continuity, and then addressing as much of the rest through insurance as they possibly can.
Right. David, as you mentioned, business continuity plan, like how important it is for any business to have it.
Oh my goodness. Well, if I can offer a statistic, now this is a U.S. statistic, but the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which oversees disasters when they occur in the U.S., has done a study, and they say that after a major event, so usually a natural catastrophe, 40% of businesses will not reopen. Of those that do reopen, 25% fail in the first year and 75% fail in the second year if they did not have business interruption insurance and a business continuity plan. What that means is if you're lucky enough to be one of the 60% that reopens after a major event, FEMA would say you only have a 19% chance of surviving thereafter if you don't have business interruption insurance and a comprehensive business continuity plan.
Right. That's an alarming stat, right?
It's a very alarming stat because it's a line of business or line of insurance that not a lot of businesses think of. Quite often, a business will approach insurance and think, well, I have to have general liability to satisfy my lease. And because I want to avoid lawsuits. And if I am sued, I want someone there standing beside me, defending me and helping me through it. They quite often think about property. So insuring the physical risk or the stock that they have from fire and from other bad things happening to it. People normally think of fire, but the number one cause of physical loss in Canada is water damage, as we experienced recently in the Toronto rainstorms. But throughout homes and businesses across the country, water damage, even outside of these sort of external perils, is the number one cause of loss. Just breaking hoses and taps left.
You saw what happened this month in Calgary, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Calgary had a major piece of infrastructure go down. Now, that's a lack of water, which is nonetheless going to cause some issues. Some of them insurable, many of them not, because that's a force majeure. It's something that couldn't be foreseen. Or the lack of having something sometimes is insurable, sometimes isn't. But I would draw more analogies to things like the Toronto rainstorms. 10 years ago, Toronto had a rainstorm that had a significant insurance impact. The more recent Toronto storms, where we received well over a month's rain within about 3 hours, is going to cost the insurance industry and therefore consumers more than $1 billion alone. That's a massive amount of money.
And it affects everyone, right?
Yes. One of the things is the nature of insurance is to address risks that are unforeseen and unexpected. So it's very difficult to buy insurance for something you expect to happen. If I expect, not only expect, but if I know my car is going to be stolen, it would be very hard to buy insurance for that. I want to buy insurance because I don't know my car is going to be stolen. And when it does happen, that's unexpected. And that's a loss that I can't take on myself. But the nature of loss is it can happen to anyone. And even the best prepared, with the best risk management, the best building, the best products, the best teams of lawyers, nevertheless, something can happen that's unforeseen. And that is quite often where insurance comes into play.
Thank you, David, for sharing such valuable insights and advice for any SME, who are looking to safeguard its operations. Now, moving forward, let's discuss the impact of inflation on insurance. Inflation affects various aspects of businesses, including insurance cost. How does inflation contribute to the escalation of insurance premiums and affect policy coverage?
Well, many small businesses have certainly seen the impacts of inflation over the last couple of years. And just like them, insurers, when they are seeking to indemnify or make whole a claimant or a customer who's had something unfortunate happen to them, we have to go out and buy those same goods and services at the newly inflated prices. So the moment that inflation is percolating through the economy, when you have an insurance event and you need to go out and buy building materials, you need to engage a contractor who may be otherwise busy, or you even need to engage the services of a lawyer or an accountant. Well, as that inflation works through the economy, those costs are going up. Insurers have to take care that we are spreading those costs amongst the premium of an entire base so that no one's premium becomes unreasonable, but in the event they have a loss, they're fully indemnified for whatever's befalling them. The other challenge with inflation is when it comes to insurance, quite often there's a time element. So as we are unfortunately seeing once again out west with wildfires recently impacting the town of Jasper, not only do you have the rebuilding that is going to happen in Jasper, but you have rebuilding hundreds of kilometers away from any other major center. You've got to get people, you've got to get material in there. You suddenly see a spike of demand for labor, a spike of demand for material. Everyone wants to get back to normal as fast as they possibly can. So just when you thought something cost X to rebuild or X to settle, once you put that time pressure on, that X starts to creep. And that's another impact that inflation can have.
Following on that, David, I have a very important questions for small businesses. Like, what strategies can SMEs employ to mitigate the impact of rising insurance cost, amidst this inflationary pressures?
Well, the number one thing that any small business can do is tell their story, because that business knows more about their business than anyone else. And it does matter. So engaging with an independent insurance broker, telling the story of how that business has considered the risks to which they might be exposed, has mitigated those risks, anything they've done to bring in other professionals, an accountant to look at payroll and key personnel risk, or what their business interruption could look like, appraisers who have come in and look at the building. Or you can even have your building looked at from an insurance point of view. Quite often that's done by companies or brokers. But small businesses can also get outside firms coming in and saying, here are some things you may want to do to protect your property. Those sorts of stories, that sort of mitigation, that thoughtfulness around, I have policies and processes in place, that goes a long way to start mitigating the cost of insurance. Because when I, as an insurer, look at a host of risks, I do in some ways have to look at those risks against each other. And if yours has processes in place and safety mechanisms built in that someone else doesn't, then naturally, I want you as a client more than I want some of the other ones. And when I do, I want to make sure I'm giving you terms and conditions at my best possible price, because I want you to join with me. I'll give you another example. If you have a retail occupation where you've got a lot of foot traffic in and out, and you have a very well-defined logging process to speak to when the floors were mopped, when an incident happens, you can demonstrate that every time an employee goes out and puts out a cone, mops it, marks off when the incident happened, when it was cleaned up. And in the wintertime, with snow and ice and whatnot, someone comes in and slips and falls. Even just having that process will help you mitigate risk, because you have done what a reasonable person can do and did do, as opposed to a business that simply says, I'll just let it dry up, or I think someone's going to get to that and mop it up. So the more you can tell your story, that's very powerful. Other ways that small business can mitigate the costs of insurance is take a look at the values, because revenues go up and down every year. That means your business interruption goes up and down every year. Your payroll might go up and down every year. Part of your payroll as you grow may be, unfortunately, less critical than some other parts. Well, maybe you only insure those people who are absolutely critical to the organization should something happen, when you make sure you want to take care of them. Having an appraiser in to make sure that your property values are reflective of the insurance value, which is different than the market value. Because again, you may be able to sell a piece of real estate for a certain amount of money in the market, but with those time pressures and inflationary pressures on values, and also repairing is always more expensive than rebuilding from the ground up, that market value might not reflect the insurance value. So having, again, that story to tell that you're on top of what your exposures are. And then beyond that, what knowing all of that allows you to do is you can pick and choose what coverage is important to you and to your business. And in conjunction with a licensed insurance broker, you can decide that some things are not coverage you need, are not frills you need. Other things are absolutely critical and you may want to buy them up. And then you can also engage in a dialogue around, well, what deductible is appropriate? What can I take as a business? What's appropriate for that risk so that I am ensuring that the truly unexpected happens, not something I expect to happen every day, because then you're just trading dollars. And frankly, that's not very economically efficient for anybody.
Right. David, understanding these economic factors, as you mentioned, is very crucial for businesses to manage their insurance effectively. Thank you so much for sharing those insights with us. Let's take a moment to reflect on the impact inflation has on our businesses, especially on aspects like insurance, which David just discussed. For all of you listening out there, navigating these uncertain times, think about how these economic changes affect your insurance needs and premiums. It's crucial to stay informed and adapt your coverage as needed to protect your hard-earned assets. Now, there is some interesting stats, like about 13.7% of Canadian businesses are challenged by rising inflation, and also around 10% face difficulties in hiring skilled workers. With economic sentiment improving, yet 40% of businesses is still uncertain about supply chain stability, like amidst 2 to 3% inflation and a 0.9% GDP growth forecast. How can small businesses adapt their risk strategies to handle inflation, hiring issues, and supply chain uncertainties?
Well, it's a very interesting problem, and quite often we feel buffeted by the forces around us rather than thinking we have any control. Small business is the foundation of industry in Canada, and it's very important that we first off realize the role that has in those supply chains and in some of those economic conditions, but also the way you can influence them. So a small business would be surprised maybe to find how much of that is insurable. Again, business interruption properly structured can address certain supply chain issues, including whether your location where you produce things has power or not. There are ways that they can buy protection and say, while I cannot control the business continuity or the risk management of the power grid or of one of my key suppliers, what I can control is the impact that has on me. And that's an insurable risk. Even things like cash flow. There are trade credit products where you can buy protection to ensure that you get paid, so that at least if something untoward happens, you don't feel that financial squeeze. I'll reiterate, when it comes to hiring key talent, if USK had an offer from an organization to join them, and it was very exciting, lucrative, but there was high risk that something could happen and the owner could say, I'm sorry, SK, we cannot continue on. I wish you the best. Versus you have the same offer from a similar organization where they say, SK, you're critical to what I do. And I have purchased what's often called key person insurance, which can also be a kidnap and ransom term, but I'm speaking of it in the business interruption, to ensure that if something happens, I can continue to pay your wages until we're back on our feet. Which of those opportunities becomes more attractive to you? That can help you secure and retain the talent that you need to run your business. When you're looking at all of the different myriad exposures that small business faces on a daily basis, it is surprising how many, with the right consultation with insurance brokers, accountants, lawyers, and other professionals, including insurance companies, can be mitigated or addressed in a pretty cost-effective manner. And then those that can't, well, that just highlights, here are some things that we can then think about on a consultative basis. Are there ways you could mitigate that risk, minimize that risk, or in some cases avoid that risk?
Right. We are discussing specialty insurance products and their benefits for SMEs. We will take a short break now, but stay tuned. After the break, we will delve into how to ensure your business has the right insurance coverage. David will share key factors to consider. Be right back.
You dreamt big. You made the leap. You and your "we're not stopping at small" business. Doesn't matter you've never done it before. You unlock those problems. You adapt to change. You learn to evolve. You're pioneers in challenging times, finding your own frontiers. Wherever you e-commerce, UPS is with you. So nothing is going to hold you back.
4 billion people check their email every day. That's 4 billion missed opportunities if your message doesn't make it. To reach your customer's inbox, you need a winning strategy. And Constant Contact delivers. Literally, over 97% deliverability. Elevate your email game with easy-to-use templates, writing assistance powered by AI, and in-depth metrics. Ensuring your email is flawless, delivered, and read. Constant Contact delivers. Give it a try.
At IHG Hotels and Resorts, we're in the business of you.
We're here to help you plug in,
connect and recharge,
make an impression,
and meet with confidence.
With 19 brands built for business,
your business gets even more rewarding.
With an award-winning loyalty program at 6,000 IHG hotels and resorts worldwide.
Welcome back to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. We are here with David Crozier, diving into how small businesses can effectively manage their insurance needs. Now, moving on, David, let's discuss about the specialty insurance products. Navigating insurance options can be daunting for many small business owners. Can you explain how specialty insurance products differ from standard commercial insurance offerings and how SMEs could benefit from them?
Quite often we get tied up in our own jargon in the insurance industry, and you'll quite often hear references to generalist insurance companies and specialist insurance companies. The difference between a generalist and a specialist is those common risks we spoke of earlier: property, liability for premises and products, automobile. Those are fairly general exposures that everyone has. They want to buy products to address those exposures. Beyond that, once you've taken care of that, there can be a host of exposures that either those companies are not comfortable with, that they don't have the specialized expertise to understand and therefore underwrite, or they don't have the desire because the market may not be big enough, or that specialization may take them too far away from their strategy. Some examples of specialty insurance would include things like errors and omissions, which for a professional or someone operating in a professional or quasi-professional capacity, when you're giving advice, when you're designing things, when you're putting your stamp on it, if you're an engineer, it runs a gamut of different exposures. You can be exposed under errors and omissions to your act or your failure to act. That's the omissions part. There's insurance for that. Directors and officers. And it's not just for public companies, for private companies as well. They can receive a host of different lawsuits for, again, acts or failures to act, or when they did act, was it improper? That can come from employees, can come from families, it can come from shareholders, private or public. It can come from governmental agencies. So again, that's a fairly specialized line of insurance, but even those are widely available. Then you start getting into the true specialisms. At Markel, we have environmental insurance. So if you have pollutants on site or bring pollutants on site, you're responsible for those. What if you're a contractor who has a tank on the back of their truck and you go around to different locations and all of a sudden you're leaking contaminants onto different locations? That's highly specialized. It's a small market. You need deep understanding of environmental regulations in this country, of the different types of site assessments, and you need a special claims understanding of how fast do you have to remediate, what governmental agencies do you have to involve to demonstrate that the insured, or the client in this case, has done everything again that they reasonably needed to do. And it goes on from there. You've heard of aviation insurance. There's mortgage insurance. Surety, which covers any kind of bond. It's not insurance per se. It's a financial guarantee that's lumped in with the insurance industry. And there are many other derivations. We even have specialized industries inside our company. For example, sport, leisure, and recreation. We call it Markel Play. And we're one of the biggest insurers of amateur sports and leisure in Canada. There are unique exposures that a specialty company needs to address, such as the opportunity for abuse to occur. And how do you build processes and protections around that? Or some of the specialized services that they would require.
David, what role does Markel plays when it comes to insurance for small businesses, and how its tailored insurance solutions have helped a small business address unique exposure? Can you provide any example or something?
Certainly. We are a specialty company, but we've tried to bridge the gap between specialty and SME, which often gets incorrectly lumped in with generalist. You're a small business, therefore you just need what everybody else does. With products such as our Markel Connect, we have an online portal for our brokers to use so that when they're discussing exposures with a client that are, sure, there's some generalities to them, but there's also elements of them that are different, they can still respond in a very fast manner. And that speed and being online helps us reduce the frictional costs of getting that coverage to the client and therefore reduce the cost. So while our Markel Connect has office packages and small property packages on there for smaller businesses, it also has a significant component of errors and omissions. And we're just in the process of starting to move some of our environmental products on there, recognizing that it's not just the big manufacturers, it's not just the big multinationals that have these exposures. It's small and medium enterprise as well. And if we can get it to them in a cost-effective manner, where the minimum premiums, which often come into play, are very, very small, in the hundreds of dollars, that brings more opportunity to those businesses to insure those exposures. And for us as an insurance industry, since it's all about spreading risk out amongst the largest population we possibly can to reduce volatility, more customers, the better, because that volatility continues to get spread.
And the premiums also will get spread, right? That's
Indeed.
very important. Yeah.
Yep.
I believe specialty products clearly offer targeted protections that can be critical for niche businesses, as you mentioned. I want to connect with our listeners about something David highlighted: the value of specialty insurance products. Whether you are running a tech startup, a small manufacturing unit, or a non-profit, understanding the specific risk your business faces and finding tailored insurance solutions can be a big game changer. Consider how customizing your insurance coverage could safeguard your business against unique risk. Now let's discuss about evaluating insurance needs. Choosing the right insurance coverage is more than just a financial decision. What factors should a small business owner consider when evaluating their insurance needs to determine whether specialized coverage is necessary for them?
First and foremost, I encourage any small business to reach out and get as much help as they can.
Right.
As I mentioned before, small businesses are experts in what they do.
Right.
Insurance, it's not a super complex, although it can be, but it's not a super simple transaction.
Getting professional help is very, very important.
Very important.
Right.
And when you reach out to independent insurance brokers, there is your single best source of support, because they have seen small businesses that may or may not look like yours. They have seen those businesses go through good times and bad, and they have seen the development of coverage. They will also liaise with companies like mine and others because they have a host at their disposal, and they'll tap into us for information about what we've seen as well. So first and foremost, a small business can reach out to a broker, can describe what their business is, and can go over with them what they think their exposures are. There's a lot of online tools that people can get to help by identifying risk matrices. There's things called failure mores and effects, even a SWOT analysis, which pretty much everybody knows that is. And that's great, but it never hurts to involve those who have seen the downside of risk, like an insurance broker. Also relying on accountants and lawyers to ensure that their tax structures are optimal, to ensure that their contracts are not putting too much onus on the business or are distributing liability where it's more appropriate, because that way they can maybe even entirely forego a loss and not have to worry about insuring it because they've got contracts that are structured to help them. Doing it on your own can be a challenge, because part of an underwriter's job, part of a broker's job, is to think what if.
I think it's not a challenge, it's not doable, David. Because as you said, every business has different needs. It's not doable from business. I think they should seek professional help. Yeah,
I agree.
And following on that, David, how can SMEs ensure they are neither underinsured or overpaying for insurance?
One of the best ways is, again, to stay on top of your business and do frequent revaluations. Now, most insurance is purchased on an annual cycle. So by frequent, I would say at least annually. More often if better, but small businesses are busy. They don't want to sit around thinking about insurance all day, much though we'd like them to. So it's critical that they review Are they living up to their revenue forecast? What do they think is going to happen to their revenue forecast next year? Is it going to go up or is it going to go down? Because quite often, particularly liability insurance, will be rated on that revenue forecast. And if that rate is adjustable, meaning that if they do more business or less business, their premiums could go up or down, often subject to a minimum retained premium. But staying on top of what is happening to your revenue really helps with pricing out what's going on. Similarly, payroll, because that flows into business interruption, as does revenue. So you make sure you're addressing the right amount of coverage for you based on how long you think a potential loss could be, and you're not overpaying. So for example, if you have a business that simply can't foresee being out longer than 6 months in the event of something major happening to them, and their payroll is $100,000 and their revenues are $1 million, don't buy $100,000 in coverage and $1 million in coverage if going over it with your broker, you've decided those are very, very unlikely to happen. You could buy $50,000 in payroll coverage and $500,000 in coverage. You could get riskier and take less. You could feel better and take more. But once you get into that 99th percentile potential for loss, it's the law of diminishing returns. You're possibly paying for something you don't need. Right. Same thing applies to equipment and physical plant. There are a host of appraisal services, both online and in person, who can come out and really speak to, well, what are the values that you have at risk? Because those values change over time, not always up, sometimes. And again, ensuring that you are taking care of what values you really have and applying the right thoughts around deductibles to them as they grow or shrink. All of those things can help you mitigate insurance costs.
After listening to your insights, I believe making informed decisions about insurance is fundamental to business security.
Well, much though I would like all of us to have the financial wherewithal to withstand anything that happens, we don't. And small businesses need to be able to focus on doing what they do best and not get up in the morning worrying about, could something happen today that puts me out of business? And that's where insurance really comes in. Finding the right products, dealing with the right professionals to ensure you get coverage that's appropriate, then allows you to go about doing what you do best. And you don't have to worry, what if a lawsuit happens? What if there's a physical loss? What if something I didn't expect befalls me? You, your staff, your stakeholders, your customers, you can still be there for them.
Right. Moving forward, David, let's discuss about business continuity planning, which we already mentioned. It's very, very important. Planning for the unexpected is very essential for long-term business success. Why is business continuity planning important for SMEs, and how does insurance play into effective continuity strategies?
The moment something happens, it's too late to start thinking, what do I do now? And particularly as the world moves at an ever faster pace. Best example of that is cyber. Most businesses have a cyber exposure. Those businesses that do not think they have a cyber exposure are probably wrong. They do. And the challenge is when you have something happen, you don't have the luxury of time. You get a phone call from a customer who says, why has my information gotten out to XYZ area? You have to act in that moment. So any kind of a business continuity plan at least helps you overcome that initial moment of inaction when you don't know what to do. Because if it's a cyber incident, you know to engage your cyber carrier, who will have an incident response team ready to go, who will walk you through what your legal and regulatory requirements are, start working on PR, work on mitigation. And often with a lot of these, they'll be installing in the background things to either prevent the problem from spreading or to monitor for future problems. It can be as simple as having a physical plan if you're a storefront operation. Well, what happens if a vehicle comes through your front window? Your BCP plan says, call your broker. You've already lined up a contractor who's ready to at least come out and secure the physical premises. You don't have to worry about getting in line with others. A lawsuit occurs. You have a certain amount of time to respond. Again, a BCP plan in conjunction with your broker can say, If something untoward is to occur, I know the steps I need to go through now. And you're not starting from square one. And the most important thing is you're not alone, because your plan advises who you should go to, when, and what you can expect from them.
Right. I believe, effective planning can indeed be the difference between surviving a crisis and folding under pressure. Now, before we wrap up, David, could you share one piece of advice for our listeners, especially small business owners who are navigating their insurance options in today's economic climate?
Certainly. Just like anything in this world, the internet is a wonderful place. It has a lot of information. It has a lot of misinformation. But to the extent possible, stay informed, be informed, and then reach out and approach those either at insurance companies, at insurance brokerages, appraisal services. There's often risk management consultants, accountants, lawyers. But of course, I'm going to lean more on the first couple, brokers and insurance companies, and find out what is available to you. Do not hesitate to ask every question you can think of, because again, you know your business. We know our business, and only by communicating with each other can we see where those intersect. But the more knowledgeable you are about the potential, the more you've thought about what could befall me and what would I do, the better story you have as a business. Then when you have that engagement, it's efficient, it's effective, you end up with the coverage you need, the terms and conditions that are appropriate for you, and at the right price. And then when economic conditions do vary, when losses happen, when something occurs, you're in partnership with a broker, with an insurance company, and with others, and all of the partners are saying, this is what we were here for. And you have that opportunity to mitigate that volatility and, once again, to just keep on doing what you do best, running your small business.
Thank you, David, for sharing your insights, your advice with our listeners. It was a great pleasure hosting you today.
Thank you very much again for having me, and I look forward to the success of every small business in Canada.
Yeah, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
To our listeners, today's key takeaway is the importance of being proactive about risk management, understanding the specific needs of your business, and choosing the right insurance solutions to support your business goals. A big thank you to our exclusive partners, exclusive banking partner RBC, exclusive shipping partner UPS, exclusive email partner Constant Contact, and our exclusive hospitality partner IHG Hotels and Groups for their invaluable support. Don't forget to subscribe to the Canadian SME Small Business Magazine by visiting our official website at CanadianSME.ca. Stay tuned for more informative episodes, and remember to keep supporting and empowering your local small businesses.